You know, in the Gospels, Jesus Christ made a very startling statement. This is Matthew chapter 12, verse 30. He said, "Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters." And there's not a lot of people that really understand that, because typically we think of a middle ground. We think of there being a fence, some point in the middle. But Christ made it clear that there was no middle ground. What did he say? Whoever is not with me is against me. And so it's important that you and I understand that statement. We understand what Christ is saying and why he's saying it. And what he's saying really is there's no middle ground, there's no fence to sit on. You know, and a lot of times we talk about, don't sit on the fence, be on one side or the other. When it comes to serving Christ, there is no fence. He made that really clear. You're either with him or you're against him. And people, understandably so, say, "I don't get it, John. How can that be? How come there's no middle ground?" People will say, "Yeah, okay, I'm not with Christ. I mean, I'm not like a Christian or anything, but I'm not against Christ. So, why isn't there a fence? I just don't care about Christ. Why? That's not being against Christ, is it?" And the answer is yes. Yeah, it is. And in order to understand that, we have to understand why the person who's not with Christ is against Christ. And it has to do with the way the devil sets up the world and what we're going to learn about atmosphere, if you will, or themes, if you will, character, if you will. I like atmosphere. That seems to work best in the way we understand it. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 2. So we're going to learn more about this in Ephesians chapter 2. And we start out, "And you," talking about Christians, "and you he made alive when you were dead due to your transgressions and sins, in which you once walked according to the ways of this world, according to the ruler of the authority of the air, the Spirit, who is now at work in those who are disobedient." So basically what it's saying is, before you were saved, you walked according to the ways of the world, according to the ruler of the authority of the air, who is the devil. And that's who we obeyed. But the phrase "ways of the world," here in the REV, sometimes translated "the course of this world," that kind of thing. We really need to understand that, because the word that we translate "ways," it's hard to bring into English literally in a way we would understand it, because it's the word aeon, which we get our English word eon from it. And generally speaking, we think of an eon or an aeon in the Greek as an age, a period of time. So, for example, we say, 2 Corinthians 4:4, that the devil is the god of this age, meaning there's an age coming in the future. And that's true. But in Greek, also, the word aeon not only refers to the period of time, but it refers to the atmosphere in the period of time, the character in the period of time. What is life in that period of time like? And we as people, just being people, we like to fit in. We don't like to be different. God created us to be part of a family, to be part of a group. And as a result, when people are feeling different, they're uncomfortable. And the devil knows this. And the word aeon, yeah, it can refer to a period of time, or it can refer to the character within that period of time. And that's exactly what the situation is in Ephesians chapter 2, when it says, "We walked according to the aeon of this world," the cosmos. We walked according to the character of the world before we were Christian, absolutely. Now, let me see if I can help you understand this character. It's very important in our culture, in certain settings, that we have a character. For example, if you go to a Mexican restaurant You might, it may be that the waiters and waitresses are wearing Mexican hats, certainly like usually some kind of Mexican clothing. There's bright colors like we would see in Mexico. There may be some decorations, some paintings. What's going on? Well, the proprietor wants you to feel, when you walk into that person's restaurant, they want you to feel as if you'd walked into Mexico. There's a mood that's being set. There's an atmosphere that's being set. The same thing if you walk into a fancy Chinese restaurant. Or let's say, for example, that it's getting to be around Halloween and somebody throws a theme party, and it's a Star Wars theme party. And you go there, and there's Star Wars decorations, and there's Starship Enterprise here and there, and there's people dressed as stormtroopers, a couple guys dressed as Darth Vader, people are carrying lightsabers, and it's a theme. And if you walked into that environment, you could feel like, wow, I'm in a Star Wars environment. But what happens if you kind of missed the invitation, misread the invitation, and you dressed up like a World War II soldier, and you had a mock M16, and you've got a green helmet on, you've got green fatigues on and stuff like that, and you go walking into a Star Wars theme party, everybody's going to turn and look at you. You're going to be really different. Well, see, what the devil does is he creates an atmosphere in the world. And you're either following Christ or you're part of that atmosphere. Well, what kind of atmosphere does the devil set up? Well, let's talk in terms of restaurants here for a second, because I think we should be all familiar with Mexican restaurants. So let's say you go out to eat one night, and there's a Mexican restaurant, and when you go in there, it's going to feel like Mexico. There's going to be colors, bright colors. There's going to be people dressed in Mexican garb. There's going to be paintings of Mexico. Chinese restaurant, you get the same thing. And any kind of, well, then you get to a restaurant, and the sign over the restaurant isn't so-and-so's Mexican restaurant or so-and-so's Chinese restaurant, or like here in Bloomington, we have a British pub, But the sign over this restaurant is, "There is no God restaurant." And when you walk in there, what would you expect? Well, you sure wouldn't expect to see any Bibles. You sure wouldn't expect anyone to be praying over their food. I mean, there's no God. It's the "there is no God" restaurant. And, people are saying whatever they want, talking whatever they want. The Bible says, no obscenity, no coarse joking. Of course, you do a lot of coarse joking and obscenity. The Bible says prayer. Of course, there wouldn't ever be any prayer in there. So it's a no-God restaurant. It's got a character. It's got a theme. And that's what the devil's done with the world. Why do so many people feel so comfortable not praying before they eat, not praying in their life, not reading the Bible, not fellowshipping with other Christians, not talking about what they're learning about God or their experience with God or what God is doing for them? Why are so many people comfortable with that? Because the devil's created a restaurant, or if you will, the devil's created a theme park. And the theme of the world is, there is no God, so don't act like one. And you know what? It's perfectly okay to not act like one, because you're in the devil's restaurant. And the theme is, there's no God. So when a person comes and says, well, yeah, okay, I'm not for Christ. I mean, I'm not a Christian, or maybe I'm a nominal Christian. I go to church on Christmas and Easter. But pray before I eat in a public restaurant? Never. Would never do that. Or read my Bible? No, I just don't really see a need to do that. That kind of thing. Share my faith? Oh no, I would never do that. I would think of that as imposing my faith. And people think that that's okay. And why do they think that's okay? Because they come walking out of their front door, and what do they walk right into? They walk right into the devil's theme park. Or they walk right into the devil's restaurant. And the theme is, there is no God restaurant. There is no God theme park. And you look around, and it's perfectly okay with everyone to act like there's no God, to complain like unbelievers complain, to not give thanks, to not pray, fit right in. It's too bad. But you see, and so somebody comes and says, well, yeah, okay, I'm not for Christ, but I'm certainly not against him. Well, yeah, you are. And the reason that you're against him is you're like the person in the Star Wars party who comes dressed up like a Star Wars person, and you fit right in. But the other thing that you do by coming to a Star Wars party dressed up like a Star Wars person is you make everybody else who's dressed like a Star Wars person feel comfortable. If you went to what you thought was a Star Wars party and it turned out you were the only one wearing Star Wars stuff, everybody else was wearing World War II stuff, you'd go, wait a minute, what happened? And even though you came to supposedly a Star Wars party, you'd stand out and you'd feel bad. It's the same thing with the world, you know. The devil has so set the theme park that we live in. He's so set the atmosphere of what we live in that we come walking out our front door and we're in this gigantic restaurant called There Is No God Restaurant. And it just feels so comfortable to act like there's no God because nobody's looking at you, nobody's questioning you, nobody's asking you what you're doing, and you fit right in. And seeing somebody who's not behaving like a good Christian ought to behave, a dedicated Christian ought to behave, is very comfortable in that atmosphere because you don't have to be a dedicated Christian to fit in. And in fact, many times when you are a dedicated Christian, you don't fit in. So Christ said, he who is not with me is against me. If you're not gathering with me, you're scattering. Why are you against Christ? Because you're wearing the same garb, acting the same way as people who don't believe in God, who are against Christ. You're part of the whole background. You're like somebody at a Star Wars party wearing a Star Wars outfit. You fit right in and you make everyone feel comfortable because you're just part of the background. Everyone now feels comfortable ignoring God. And we never want to be in that situation. You know, Christ wasn't kidding. What did he make the statement? He said, whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. We don't want to be against Christ. We don't want to scatter. And what that means is that we're going to have to be with Christ. We're going to have to be for him. And that's going to take some conscious thought. How do I live so Christian that I please Christ? And pretty much by definition, that means the world isn't going to be real happy with you. You're probably going to have some religious views the world doesn't agree with. You're going to have some behaviors that stand out. They stood out for Jesus Christ. But I tell you what, when you're a committed Christian, when you are with Christ, when you're not part of the atmosphere and background of the There Is No God restaurant, then Christ will reward you richly for it. You know, if you're a born-again Christian, you're going to live forever. And Christ will reward you for standing with him in this life. So I would encourage myself and you too, let's be with Christ. Thanks so much for watching this video. Hope you found it helpful and a blessing. If you would like to contribute to the effort of producing these videos and having them go out all over the world, please consider donating at stfonline.org/donate. And while you're thinking about things, don't forget to push the subscribe button at the bottom of the screen so you get notified of future videos. God bless.